Everybody, welcome to Linn County Board of County Commissioners meeting for December 8th, 2020. We are still in our virtual format, so please note that if you are here for public comment, you'll be given a time to speak, 3 minutes for public comment, and we'll ask you at that point in time to raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, you're muted and can watch as long as you'd like. If you have any questions during that portion, please let us know. I will be turning it over to our moderator at that point, who will give more thorough instructions as well. Today, we have a 10 a.m. time certain. Other than that, we'll just move right into our board meeting. Are there any adjustments to our agenda? Commissioner Farr.
I'm actually going to ask the attorney for a clarification on a potential adjustment to the agenda. And Mr. Dingle, are you present? I hear no one from the attorney, so then I'll direct it to Mr. Mokrahajski. I sent a message to you and Mr. Dingle last night that I am considering making a motion to reconsider a vote at the last meeting. The last meeting was Tuesday/Wednesday of last week. And my question is, what would be the appropriate time to make such a motion? I believe I have the answer, but I wanted a confirmation that it is during items from commissioners, unless you have a different recommendation.
I think that's sufficient. I don't know if Mr. Dingle is here. He's probably the best person to advise you on that, but I think doing that under, you've noted it now, and then when you get to commissioner's business, that's, I think that's a fine time to do it.
And I'm on this, if I'm on the line, and that would be fine.
Okay, and the commissioner business then is item 13A, which we will attend to later on today, this afternoon. Thank you. And Chair Buck, for the record, not 100% determined that I will make that motion. I'm really fairly certain that I will make a motion to reconsider a vote at the last meeting. Thank you.
Okay, any other adjustments to the agenda? I don't see any, so we'll move on to emergency business. Any emergency business for this morning? No? Okay, we'll move on to public comments. So this is the point in time, if you're an audience member and watching our meeting and you wish to give public comment, that you raise your virtual hand, and we will try to give everybody who wants public comment enough time to speak. But in the event that there are more commenters than we have time for, we may have to limit the number of speakers, the time amount per speaker, or choose people randomly. We haven't had to do that. I hope not to have to do that today. And right now, I'll turn it over to our moderator.
Thank you, Chair Buck. At this time, I will open up the meeting for public comment. If you do wish to give public comment, please raise your virtual hand. I do see a few people have already done so. Once you raise your hand, please don't toggle the button again, because that puts your hand down. So just press that button one time. I will begin our public comment with Karen Kaplan, followed by Chris McAllister. Karen, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. You may begin your public comment.
Thank you for your work and for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to urge the county commissioners to adopt a county-wide polystyrene ban. Thank you for this important work. As you know, the city of Portland banned this material in 1986, the University of Oregon banned it in 1988, with the city of Eugene implementing a ban ordinance in January 2020, following a ban that was previously implemented in Florence, Oregon. If you look around the county, you can already see that there are countless food establishments that have already stopped using styrofoam containers and have found other substitutes. The road to implementation has already started. With this ordinance, it will help finish the job and get polystyrene out of the waste stream while protecting public health. I want to point out that there are acceptable and readily available alternatives to this material, such as paper items like hot and cold cups and paper-to-go boxes. Food distributors are also carrying recycled content paper foodware items as well. These actions will help businesses save money by reducing waste and help the environment by keeping these toxic single-use items out of the waste stream and out of our local storm drains. This is an easy ordinance that is ready to be enacted now. The commission should take action on this. Pushing the issue to be included in the development of a climate action plan is pushing the issue downstream. In the climate action plan, there's numerous details that will cause this actionable issue to be buried in other more immediate issues. Likewise, the climate action plan for the county is over a year away from being vetted and implemented. The city of Eugene has implemented this, the University of Oregon has implemented it, the city of Florence has done it. The largest city is in the county, and one of the largest employers have passed and successfully implemented this ordinance. Several states and cities around the country have banned polystyrene, including the states of Maryland and New Jersey and cities of New York, to name a few. It is a public health issue that can be addressed now. There is momentum and opportunity. I urge the county to work towards addressing this important issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. Next speaker will be Chris McAllister, followed by Ward Ricker. Chris McAllister, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. Mr. McAllister, I do show you are self-muted. There you go.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Chris McAllister, District 2, and I come before you today as a provider on the front lines of our health crisis and COVID epidemic to speak of the dangerous gaps and presumed resources that fall short of real need. And these items will not be rectified without a further understanding of the issue. We are told there is access to testing for frontline workers and unhoused folks to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I'm here to share a few examples of how this cannot be further from the truth and how current inaction on the front lines is actually helping increase danger. Number one, staff checks in with a 101 fever, runny nose, and cough. A call to the COVID hotline says tests are at Nova Clinics. Going in, they are redirected to urgent care as not all clinics do testings. Due to the symptoms, they are then sent to the ER to test. This is being billed despite not being COVID, starting at the option from the helpline. While it was same-day testing, it came at a greater cost. Number two, unhoused folks exposed to a community who left quarantine early are sent to urgent care by Nova to get tested before entering shelter. Not having ID, they are sent on LTD to 5 other sites. If positive, potentially seeding 6 sites and the means to get to them with a virus. They are denied for the same reason of no ID. Rejected, they attempt to enter shelter and lacking the proper test are now camping where it's not been swept yet until there's an answer. After being told by public health of an outbreak at a shelter, providers are asked in a public shelter meeting to not refer to the situation as an outbreak by staff due to the potential damage it may cause. External providers were not told for 2 weeks of the 100+ person exposures and were exposed due to service delivery to those who exited early before site quarantine, the decentralized wash and hygiene facilities to their sites, or utilizing the few public spaces that are also used by those who were at risk. HHS staff and public health staff acknowledge the barriers of no ID, limited insurance, delayed appointments, wait times, bottlenecked public resources, and cross-contaminated sites. However, this is unable to move into actionable items by electeds when they are downplayed by senior staff. Shortages in public health have limited what was a more direct approach earlier this year. Your words fell silent on our governor when we asked as a combined community of Springfield, Eugene, and Lane County for help in April. We had more consistent in-place testing in the previous wave of COVID, and now it feels like fatigue has anchored itself in our community when the dangers are compounded. The need for shelter from the elements, access to prevention, identification of risks, and safe spaces for people in place or to be taken care of is much more now than it was in March. We are 4 days from the death anniversary of Tom C., who was told that the system works and died alone in the street waiting 8 hours for medical support. He would have been a high-risk candidate for this illness. We need access to testing that is real-time and that is not assumed to be accessible while people are being spread out in our community by the police. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Ward Ricker, followed by Deborah McGee. I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you. I am concerned about the amount of waste that goes into the landfill. And I am trying to basically start with a reuse center that would get some of that stuff out and reduce the amount of stuff that goes into the landfill. Or actually, I'm trying to get the county to provide a space. And if the county would do that, I would be happy to do much of the work involved in maintaining and keeping that going. So I want to ask the county if they would consider trying to get reusable stuff out of the landfill by creating a space where that could be done. So basically that's it. It's just if you go to the landfill, you see a lot of stuff in there that doesn't need to be there. A lot of it is stuff that could be used by somebody if it wasn't there. But people need to have a place where they can take it, because thrift stores, they only accept so much. They're kind of fussy at what they accept. So a place where people can get rid of stuff without having to dump it into the trash, into the waste, or into the pit would be a wonderful thing. So I'd like to know if the county commissioners would authorize, or at least consider trying to authorize such a space.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Deborah McGee, followed by Mike McFadden. Deborah, I will unmute your microphone and you may, let me restart the timer here, and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Debbie McGee, and I've lived in Lane County for 40 years. I want to thank Chair Heather Buck for representing me. I volunteer with 350 Eugene, and on behalf of the almost 2,000 supporters of 350 Eugene, I want to urge you to join other climate-wise counties and ban the use of styrofoam in food service. What is the cost of business as usual? What are the costs of our continued assault on the planet? We have already experienced a 1.2 degree of temperature increase. 2020 will be one of the 3 hottest years in human history. We're experiencing the extreme loss of biodiversity. The ecological web of life is collapsing. We can see the strategy of the fossil fuel industry as citizens move to fossil-free transportation and demand to electrify everything. Fossil fuel corporations are trying to build more LNG and methanol refineries, like the one recently defeated in Tacoma and the proposed Kalama methanol refinery on our Columbia River. We need to have enforceable policies. We must reach net zero emissions of greenhouse gases. A growing number of people are understanding this crisis, especially our nation's youth. The climate crisis is a leadership crisis. We must have ambition and commitment. We must transform our relationship to nature. We must make peace with nature because we are undermining the foundation for the interconnectedness of life. I'm a teacher, so I'm going to repeat the most important points. We humans are knowingly undermining the very foundation for the interconnectedness of life upon which our own and our children's lives depend. We must change course. No more business as usual. The climate crisis is a leadership crisis. You are part of the problem, or you are part of the solution. Which side of history will each of you stand on? Please take this baby step away from life-threatening fossil fuels and ban styrofoam in food service in Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Mike McFadden. Mr. McFadden, I will reset the timer and unmute your microphone, and you may begin your public comment. There you go.
Hello, good morning, Chair and members of the board. Thank you for this time to give public comment. I really wanted to, before the end of his term is up, take a moment in public comment to give my appreciation to Commissioner Pete Sorensen for his service to our community as a commissioner on the Lane County Board of Commissioners, and as a longtime constituent of his. I just want to give my thanks and appreciation. I feel like, Pete, if it's okay to call you that, you've always been very approachable and responsive. I really appreciate the advocacy you've given and the strong voice that you've brought to a number of topics like civil liberties and freedom of speech and the right to peaceably assemble. But I also appreciate that you've brought it with a tempered and reasonable perspective. I know that you value all of the small businesses here in our community and really care about them and the success that they bring to all of us. And I really appreciate the strong voice you've brought to advocating for better response to this public health emergency that we're in. I know that we're going to just see a far worse time as we go into the winter, and I really just want to appreciate, I know that we all appreciate our public health professionals and their personal sacrifices, and as public servants, you all appreciate the sacrifices as you in your own personal lives make to serve the community. So with that in mind, I think it's still totally appropriate to ask tough questions and advocate for the strongest defense of the vulnerable in the community. So Commissioner Sorensen, I really just want to again appreciate you for your service. I know that we're all going to miss you as a commissioner in our community, but I know that you're going on to advocate for things in other arenas, particularly for environmental issues. So again, thank you for your service, and I really appreciated being your constituent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I do not show anyone else has their hand raised to present public comment. If you have not given public up, I just saw one raised. Cindy Matherly, I see your hand has been raised. Let me reset the timer and I will call on you for public comment. One moment. Cindy, I have unmuted your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen, for your good work and service. Good morning, commissioners. My high school son was going to join in this comment, but he's in distance learning class. I'd like to talk about foodware made of polystyrene. The trade name for it is styrofoam, as we commonly refer to it. In my comments, I'll use the word polystyrene. It's a health and environmental hazard, as we all know, from start to finish. It leaches toxic substances, especially in hot drinks and alcohol, in reheated leftovers of oily and acidic foods. As a mother of a high school student, I'm alarmed that schools in Oregon are still serving students in polystyrene foodware. Tens of thousands of workers in the manufacturing of it are exposed to styrene, leading to severe illness and death associated with cancers and heart disease. Besides contributing to climate change, its manufacturing leads to a dangerous air pollutant at ground level called tropospheric ozone that's associated with nausea, asthma, and bronchitis. If burned or incinerated, toxic carbon monoxide is released into the air. Used for mere minutes, it can take 500 years to decompose. Fragile and easily broken up, its small pieces are consumed by land and marine animals, causing harm and death. In a water environment, it absorbs toxins. Microscopic pieces are ingested by aquatic life, ultimately entering our own food chain. Styrene residues are found in 100% of all samples of human fat tissue. Over 400 cities and municipalities in the USA have banned single-use polystyrene foodware. Portland banned it in the late 1980s. Eugene and Florence have prohibited in food serviceware and more. Let's ban polystyrene in food serviceware in food and beverage in Lane County. Our diverse community has met individually with Lane County commissioners over the past year. Each have told us that you support the regulation of these unneeded and likely carcinogenic chemicals in our food chain, bringing your own ideas on how to move forward. We feel it is time for the County Commission to step forward with a work session or straw poll on a commission work session here in Lane County to examine how other jurisdictions, including many counties throughout the nation, have successfully addressed this problem. Thank you, commissioners, for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. I do show one more person has raised their hand for public comment, Tom Kreider. I will reset the timer and unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Good morning. Good morning. I spoke last week about the county banning
Lost your audio, sir.
We lost your audio, Mr. Kreider. Mr. Kreider, I do show yourself muted. Can you unmute? Chair Buck, I'm not sure. Mr. Kreider is our last person for public comment, and I'm not sure how.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, should I start over? Good morning.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Good morning. I spoke last week about the county banning polystyrene use by the beverage and restaurant industries. I'm aware that if one continues to advocate, many people say the same thing they've already said, only slower and louder. I might be guilty of repeating what I've already said a bit, but preventing the additive effect of the use of polystyrene is an important topic. We all know that for decades, Oregon has been known to be a leader in the United States in promoting environmental protection. We are not alone in this fight. Maine, New Jersey, Maryland have banned expanded polystyrene. Colorado, Virginia, and New York have proposals in their legislatures. Additionally, another 13 states and the District of Columbia have banned polystyrene foam in one or more cities and counties within those states. Polystyrene lasts forever as toxic trash, threatening humans, wildlife, marine life, our food supply, and our environment, while costing taxpayers millions in cleanup and mitigation costs. There's no practical recycling of expanded polystyrene due to high food contamination rates and the market to clean, handle, and process the material. Styrene is a suspected carcinogen and neurotoxin, which potentially threatens human life. Styrene residues, as was said before, are found in 100% of all samples of human fat tissue. At this point, the 2019 populations of Eugene and Florence, which have ordinances banning polystyrene use, constitute close to 50% of the population in Lane County. It is well established that replacing non-biodegradable beverage and food containers with biodegradable or recyclable items will further protect the public health and safety of the residents and the county's natural environment. Lane County needs a ban of polystyrene use by the food and beverage industry, not only for the residents and environment of the present, but for the residents and environment of the future. Gandhi said it all when he stated, "The future depends on what you do today." I urge you all to make a meaningful impact on Lane County's human and environmental health by instituting a ban on polystyrene use by the food and beverage industry. I want to thank you for all the work you do to ensure the quality of life in Lane County and its future. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I do not show that we have any more people signed up for public comment. So Chair Buck, I will turn the meeting back over to you.
Very good, thank you. I will go to Commissioner's response and remonstrances. Just a reminder, we do have a 10 a.m. time certain. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Buck. I have two things very briefly. First, I'll directly talk to Mr. Kreider. And Mr. Kreider, in talking to you, I'll be also speaking to Cindy Matherly and the other two speakers who spoke from, I believe, CRUP is the name of the organization that you are representing. You and I were talking last March, planned to have a meeting on March 30th, but due to things far beyond our control, our meeting was canceled at that point in time, and I did not hear back from you until very recently, late October. As I said back in March, I'm interested in moving forward with discussion regarding polystyrene, the use of polystyrene in food service in Lane County. I will say that at this point and wait for other commissioners to make any suggestions regarding how we move forward. As you know, other things have taken a lot of precedence in terms of staff time. So once again, I'm not certain exactly how and what time frame we were going to move forward on, but it is something that I support the discussion on. And the second thing I'd like to mention, Chair Buck, is that I did not mention which motion I intended or I'm considering making a motion to reconsider from last meeting. I'd like to state that at this time. It's the motion that was made on item 13B concerning ordinance 20-08 and order 20-08 1813. The motion, I believe, was made by Commissioner Sorensen, and it may have been seconded by Commissioner Burney, but I did not write down the second on it. It was to have a sixth reading on, to accept the fifth reading and have a sixth reading on December 15th. And that'll be the motion that I will be considering making a motion to reconsider. I voted in the affirmative on that motion. It was a 4-to-1 passage. And while we loosely adhere to Robert's Rules of Order do provide for a motion to reconsider by a member of the affirmative vote at the very next meeting of the body. And that's my consideration at this point in time, Chair Buck.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Sorensen?
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to hear from the public during the public comment process. I'll just mention a few items. Concerning Mr. Ricker's proposal, I think it is a good proposal, and I think that the board should follow up on it and get a report back from staff on it. Mr. Orlandini and Mr. Turk have both been in touch with Mr. Ricker on this, and I think it'd be good if we could elevate his proposal to the board level. With regard to the polystyrene ban, I think that the overwhelming evidence is that jurisdictions, whether they're small cities like Florence or bigger cities like Eugene or states, they have moved to ban the single use in food and beverage for polystyrene containers. And I think that what we should be doing is directing our legal counsel to write up a county ordinance that takes the themes from the ordinances that have been passed in Oregon, and particularly counties and cities within our county, and get a draft of this and report back to the board and have a work session on the draft. Concerning the idea of a motion to reconsider, I just want to say that although Robert's Rules of Order provide for how we govern these meetings, that's only in the event that there is no conflict with existing law. And when the board directed that a land use matter and a land use ordinance be placed on a future agenda for future consideration, without giving notice to the parties in the form of a written agenda, without having the agenda team put it on the agenda, this kind of approach might either violate the land use laws or at least the spirit of the idea that it takes 3 commissioners to put something on the agenda. So I guess we'll take it up whenever there's a motion, but that's my current thoughts on the use of a parliamentary tool to look at Robert's Rules of Order and say that the work that was done in a prior meeting can be immediately reviewed in the next meeting without giving notice to the public, that our agenda process gives lots of notice to the public that something is going to be brought up in a board meeting. And that's the purpose of emergency business, to bring up items that are truly emergency and cannot wait for the agenda process. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Burney and then Commissioner Boswell.
I want to thank everyone that presented. If I'm going to respond to a couple of them. To one of them, in all transparency, I received Mr. McAllister's concerns via a Springfield City Councilor. I brought them up to Ms. Gaffney. Ms. Gaffney responded. Mr. McAllister, I understand, saw that response in talking to the Springfield City Councilor. So obviously, we're hearing different things. So maybe I'm going to request that either Karen in her presentation today on public health or I integrate in, or I'll specifically ask where that dissonance is, because it's difficult when we hear two different things. I do know that all of us want real-time testing for everyone on a daily basis with rapid turnaround. We're not there yet. So I'll just ask for clarification on that, but I appreciate, Chris, your presentation on the polystyrene or the styrofoam. Again, in full transparency, I know we all have been approached with this concern. I thought it might make sense to give that to the Climate Advisory Group for a recommendation. By the same token, I understand and appreciate the perspective that that might take too long. And if anything, I have a bias for action also. So I will, when we discuss this, at the right part of the agenda, and when a work session around this issue is proposed, I will agree with Commissioners Farr and Sorensen to such a work session to elevate that topic. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you, Chair Buck. Throughout my political career, I've stressed the importance of maximizing freedom and liberty in our country. It's one of the reasons why I support the decriminalization at the national level of cannabis that actually finally passed the House recently. And as we look at that, and we also think about the wonders of the invisible hand in our capitalist system, we have made major changes in what's available for consumers and what isn't available, just based on consumer preference and public pressure. You go into any grocery store today and you will find an organic produce section. We didn't mandate they have an organic produce section. The public demanded there be one. So now everywhere you go, there's an organic produce section. We do not need to, every time people want to change what's available to consumers, go to government action and ban an item. So I would strongly recommend to the folks that are coming to us looking for government action, again, to control consumers, to possibly maybe try and go to the consumers and ask them to pressure the people that are actually providing polystyrene, which is not every food establishment out there, and put pressure on them to provide something other than polystyrene. It's pretty simple to go when you go to a Chinese food place and you can say, I want all of mine in cardboard cartons. I don't want any polystyrene. If enough people do that, you won't see polystyrene available. Just like you don't see BPA in any water bottles anymore, because the consumers demanded that it be eliminated. So we just really need to think twice about constant knee-jerk, let's take a government action over something that really should be left to the choice of the consumer. Otherwise, we're going to endanger ourselves of constantly trying to limit freedom and liberty. And we end up on the wrong side of things, like we went with cannabis and making it a class 1 drug, which put people away in prison for something that's pretty minor. When you think about it, we really should be going the other direction and trying to allow for maximizing choice, but allowing the public through their buying habits to control what's available on the market. And that's all I've got to say about that. I really strongly suggest we stay away from the topic of starting to ban consumer products at the county level.
Thank you for the comments. I appreciate people taking their time to call in as well. I have been for some time an advocate for manufacturing facilities to be responsible for the end life of their product. We haven't gotten there as a nation, even as a state or on the local level yet. There's a lot of items in packaging that are left to the county to deal with in our landfill. So there's a lot of room and discussion that should happen around that. Because if we can't recycle or reuse those products in their end life, they are put in our landfill, they're put in our environment, and of course that damages our community as a whole. So if that does come up, I'll be supportive. With that, we have a 10 a.m. time certain, so we're able to get only one of our updates in regarding either fire or COVID-19. Mr. Mokrajewski, which one would you like to start with?
We're going to do the fire update, if that's all right with commissioners. Mr. Hurley is ready to go. He's got a short presentation. We'll take questions, and then after your 10 a.m. time certain, we'll do the COVID update. Danny, there?
I'm here.
Take it away.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners. So updates, you heard from Devin Ashbridge, our PIO, last week. She covered for me and gave you a nice update. I watched about the website and our public outreach. Our big effort for public outreach in the week ahead actually is tomorrow. We're doing an ash and debris cleanup virtual town hall. That'll be on Facebook tomorrow at 6 p.m. People can find that at facebook.com/Lane County Government. And hoping to answer any remaining questions that people have as we get ready to step up the phase 2 ash and debris cleanup. We still don't have a timeline on that, but it should be coming fairly soon. We're pretty pleased with the work we've been doing over the last 3 months to get people to sign up for that program through right of entry forms. We've had over 500 people sign up for that program. So happy to see that people are going to take advantage of that state and federal funded program. For social services, we're slowed down a little bit by COVID, given the freeze and now being in extreme risk. We've stopped moving upriver to provide social services. However, Lucy's Emerly still answering questions by phone and participating in several meetings to coordinate efforts there. On the disaster housing, you also received a nice update from Austin, unfortunately with some bad news about the denial of our direct housing mission request from FEMA. I am planning to speak with the chair and vice chair soon to talk about whether we want to bring this up for discussion by the board to consider an appeal of that decision. We have about 3 weeks left to make a decision whether we want to appeal that. Given that we've received that, we are starting to shift our efforts to other efforts around housing. We're meeting with Tiny Homes Builders Group hopefully soon and trying to clarify and streamline our processes around tiny homes and other sorts of temporary shelters. With Red Cross, they will be phasing out at the end of the year, and the state will be taking over the hotel sheltering. We did receive an update since the board board materials were posted. We now have 183 people in hotels, so that number continues to drop as people either are found that they don't qualify for that type of sheltering or they've moved on to find other forms of sheltering. On the debris cleanup piece, again, we're through the hazardous waste cleanup part, and now we're waiting for the state effort that will be led by ODOT on the larger debris and the ash cleanup. We're working on signing an IGA with ODOT now. On the watershed front, there's a lot of great work happening there. I'm hoping after the first of the year that we'll get eWeb here in front of you. They're going to be doing some restructuring around how they're leading their effort, but they have a lot of good partnerships and great work happening. They've set up a portal where 182 landowners have requested assistance for erosion control and soil stabilization, and they're working with different entities to provide that support. But very proud of the work that's happening there. And one news of note, some good news, Lane Workforce Partnership applied for a grant early on through the National Dislocated Worker Grant Funding Program and received $1.6 million in funding, which could grow to $4.9 million over the next 2 years to employ crews to work on fire restoration projects and cleanups and other other efforts up there. So that'll be a great resource. So I'm excited to share that news. We have a meeting later in the week to start coordinating with them on that work. And that's all I have for you. I wanted to keep this short. I know you have a 10 a.m. time certain, but subject to your questions, that concludes my update. And I would like to propose that moving to probably a monthly update moving forward, if that meets your needs, rather than a weekly update, as things have kind of slowed on the amount of change happening on this project.
Thank you very much. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Burney.
Dan, I wanted to report, notwithstanding the upcoming conversation with Chair, a 3-week time frame to determine whether we appeal a denial means that we have one board meeting, right, between now and that time frame. So I just want to underscore that with the board. I've been told by others that have gone through this that expect denials from FEMA initially and prepare to appeal. I know you'll review with us the burden that would or would not place on you, but I've heard that. I also want to share that this in meetings with the City of Springfield's city manager and economic development manager, if we do launch an appeal, they want to provide whatever data they can to you to support that appeal, because it is horrendous, right? In a constrained housing market, where housing affordability is an issue at every level, with a homeless population larger per capita than many areas, and with very few rental vacancies, it's kind of tough to swallow. You know that, so we'll discuss that. I also want to just suggest, and maybe you're already on this, but there are groups, including the Northwest Youth Corps, that fire restoration is something that kind of have an infrastructure. They want to attract more people. I was delighted as participating on the Lane Workforce Partnership when that resource came in, and I see it as a real opportunity to get a lot of healthy, probably most young, not all, people out there working with community members, doing restoration work, you know, almost an army of people. And I can tell you, having gone through a like, but not exactly like kind of effort before, when people in affected areas see that assistance and see those smiling faces and see people and bodies ready to help, it provides a morale lift, which can't be underscored. And I think that area would be wonderful. So that's my only input. I wanted to thank you. Thanks a lot, Dan. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments or questions? I'll add that I'm pretty close with all the meetings regarding the wildfire. So I'm involved multiple times during the week and in those meetings, but as Mr. Hurley had said, the big changes are less and less so, although it's still really important that we pay attention to the recovery process up the McKinsey. I know as time goes by, people forget and move on to the next big thing on the news. And I just want to remind folks that this is an extremely important community asset, and the people really need our help. Unfortunately, in the COVID times here, they are missing one really key ingredient in recovery, and that's getting together as a community and processing what has happened. And usually by now, you know, many communities already have meetings about talking about rebuilding and recovery where everybody comes, and we're not able to do that right now because of COVID-19. And that is to the detriment of our community. And as soon as we all can get back out, those community meetings need to restart. They're doing their very best by having small meetings, Zoom meetings, if they can even get internet. But it is a really tough time for them, where they've gone through such a massive personal change in the middle. Now, the holidays, many are tent camping because they don't want to leave their property and are afraid of looting or other people trespassing. And so they'll camp in the middle of winter, and it's pretty dangerous out there. I marvel at their strength and recovery, but people can only be so strong. Thank you very much, Mr. Hurley. We'll move on to our consent calendar, try and get a few things out of the way before we hit our 10 a.m. time certain. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got multiple seconds, but I'll say moved by Commissioner Burney, second by Commissioner Bozievich. Any discussion? I don't hear any, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 7A, Order 20-12-08-03, in the matter of approving 2 contracts with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contract. I will declare a personal conflict of interest as I'm related to the executive director of St. Vincent de Paul, and I will close my camera and my audio and give the proverbial gavel over to Vice Chair Burney.
Got it. So item 7A, Order 20-12-08-03, the matter of approving 2 contracts with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contract. And item 7B, Order 20-12-08-04, in the matter of approving 4 contracts and 2 amendments, delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved action. I have Karen Gaffney for presenting this to us. Karen?
And Chair, Mr. Chair, Karen Gaffney is actually not here right now.
You can call me Chair.
What's that? But you want to go by Vice Chair?
Yeah.
Commissioner Burney, Karen Gaffney is not here right now. She went back to the EOC since we thought we were going to take the fire update up until the 10 o'clock time certain. So Karen's not here. It's a pretty straightforward item. I don't know if the board has questions. If you want to hear from Karen or you have questions that you want to ask of her, I'd suggest that we hold these items until either right before or right after the COVID update when we're done with the 10 o'clock time certain.
What is the will of the board? Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Co-Chair, Acting Chair Burney. I think these are fairly straightforward motions, and the only reason that I would like to discuss them is to highlight the fact that we are making this, taking this action. That being said, I don't see a reason to bring Ms. Gaffney back, and with the consent of the acting chair and the board, I'd like to make a motion. My motion would be to pass Order 20-12-08-03 in the matter of approving 2 contracts with St. Vincent de Paul, etc.
Is there a second? Commissioner Sorensen seconds the motion, if that's correct. Is that correct, Commissioner? Okay. Is there further discussion on this item? Commissioner Farr, did you want to, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Well, and I will talk about this at the end of the meeting rather than right now, but I'll highlight the work that St. Vincent de Paul is doing in cooperation with Lane County. It's longstanding, and it's reaches far into the past and will reach far into the future. That's really all I need to say at this point, Acting Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? If there are no other comments, I would just like to state that this simply exemplifies the action orientation of this body and Mr. Mokrahajski and Ms. Gaffney, and it's just another attempt to chip away at creating more services for the populations here that need them so desperately. Mr. Mokrahajski, before we call for a vote, did you want to make any comments?
No, I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve Order 20-12-08-03 in the matter of approving 2 contracts with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contract. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it, 4-0. Commissioner Buck recused. Not recused. What's the word?
Recused.
Well, there she is to tell me what the word is. Okay, the gavel now is going back to Chair Buck.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 7B, Order 20-12-08-04, in the matter of approving 4 contracts and 2 amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved actions. If there are no particular questions for Ms. Gaffney, I would entertain a motion to approve as stated.
Chair Buck, I would like to make the motion, please, and speak ever so briefly to the motion if it's seconded.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Farr, second by Commissioner Sorensen. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Buck. I'd just like to mention the names of the contractors that we are approving these contracts for, because these are agencies that we deal with extensively. And once again, like as I previously stated when you were not here, the previous contract that we just authorized reaches far into the past and will reach far into the future with Columbia Care, with Carry It Forward, Shelter Care, and ALK 100 LLC. So thank you very much, Chair, for that latitude.
Very good. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Are there any county council announcements before we move into our 10 a.m. time certain? I'm not hearing county council this morning, so we'll hold that off till later. When he's present. We have a few minutes, so I will just check in with Mr. Mokryski to see if there's any particular announcement you'd like to make this morning while we have a few moments.
The 2 announcements I was going to share with you. One, I was going to have Austin here to talk about the business grant program we launched last Thursday, but that's a discussion. And I imagine you may have some questions. And then the second item was to follow up on the request from the board last week to look at the use of the Lane Event Center outdoor parking lot space area for unhoused camping. That's also a discussion. So I guess I could take the latter and start getting into the Lane Event Center issue if you'd like me to.
Sure, why don't you prep us, and then after in the afternoon when it comes back up, we can discuss some more.
So last week you heard some public comment requesting the use of the Lane Event Center property, the outdoor space. Of course, the board knows last spring we used both the Expo Hall and the Wheeler Pavilion for a congregate shelter. And we tried to do that in a way that was consistent with the concerns around this pandemic. It created a number of challenges, both neighborhood challenges as well as public health concerns, that a lot of things we learned from early in the pandemic, and we made the intentional choice not to pursue that same kind of structure again this year. As the board knows, we continue to utilize those properties for limited EGAN activation. And so we are allowing, and we're coordinating with St. Vincent de Paul on EGAN activation to use some of our indoor facilities for that purpose. It's also important to keep in mind that we're also using the Lane Event Center property because of the large parking lot area and the ingress and egress. It's been a really great location for us to do various testing events for COVID testing. We're also planning that as vaccinations roll out, that is a potential location for conducting vaccinations in a safe way. And so I just want to point that out, that there are multiple uses. And then of course, we all know that we used a number of portions of that property for wildfire services. So it's a property that we use oftentimes for emergency response and large events outside of the programmed events that happen there. It's also important to note, I think the public comment last week was suggesting as many people as possible we put in Conestoga huts. The city of Eugene, as the board is well aware, the city of Eugene has an ordinance that requires if you're going to have, I think you can locate up to 6 structures, Conestoga huts or tents in a location without receiving approval from the city council. But if you're going to have a rest stop of 15 people or more, it requires that location be approved by the city council. So we are, the bottom line is that we have been looking for, as the board knows, we purchased 100 pallet shelters, and we've been distributing those to Florence and Cottage Grove and other partners here in the metro area. We still have a number of those that we're looking to locate. And we have been looking at the Lane Event Center, some portion of the Lane Event Center property that would not create a conflict with other existing uses that are happening, as I mentioned, Egan and COVID testing and potential vaccinations and other things that are happening there. So we are evaluating if there's a portion of the site that would be more suitable for up to 15 individuals to be a part of a city of Eugene approved rest stop. This would require, again, the city council approval. The city council meets for the last time next week, I believe, before they go on break for the holiday. So we're actively working on that with various partners, but I just want to be clear that the idea that we can locate large numbers, even if they're individual units, we still need to go through the city code requirements, and we still need to be mindful of the public health impacts there. It's also important to note that there are service connections, so 24/7 security would need to be provided on site, both for the benefit of the guests and the neighbors. We would need to have housing navigation services to include outreach and engagement, partnership development, housing preparation work, and then helping to site people. Again, these are temporary shelter solutions. Our goal is to get people ultimately connected to permanent housing. And so we want to make sure that we have services for individuals to help get them connected to shelter, as well as to help support the surrounding neighborhood. There were a number of neighborhood challenges that we faced in the spring, if the board recalls. And so we would just want to make sure, and in particular with our commitment with the Jefferson West neighborhood and the planned permanent supportive housing project that is going to begin construction soon on 13th and Tyler, that we're a good neighborhood partner there. We'd also need restroom, hand washing, and shower units. Each unit of pallet shelters requires a 120 volt, 20 amp dedicated power source for heating and other electrical requirements. And so those are things that we would need to do. And then, of course, again, emergency, we need to follow all CDC and public health requirements for emergency shelters in non-congregate settings. That includes adequate PPE, sanitation supplies, distancing, symptom screening, connecting individuals to medical care, testing, and those types of things. Karen Gaffney will talk about, when we do the COVID update, she'll talk about the questions raised about testing. As she said, we've had multiple testing events and a lot of outreach with our nonprofit partners that's happening on testing for the unhoused community. So again, neighborhood impact and managing those dynamics. So the bottom line here is we are actively working on identifying a location for up to 15. What we're looking at is siting these pallet shelters, because they actually have, we purchased these, they can be set up really quickly. They have electrical heating units within them. We're trying to identify the right location there. We're coordinating both with our human services and our public works and Lane Event Center staff on that. Again, it will require City of Eugene approval. So we'll keep the board updated on this, and hopefully we'll have an update next Tuesday for you. And I just want to, just oftentimes we face this discussion where you'll get public testimony and people will say, well, you have, 40 plus acres at the Lane Event Center here in the metro area. Why don't you just put everybody there? And I think as the board certainly understands that it's just not as simple as doing that. There is, I think, as you heard just in the brief update that I gave you, a lot of complexity, a lot of dynamics, particularly in the current environment. So we're very pleased to move forward with that initiative, and we'll keep the board updated on it as we move forward. I know we're at 10 o'clock, so happy to take any questions, or we can hold those until we get past our 10 a.m. time certain.
Let's hold our questions for that when we come back around to announcements and move into our item 9A on our agenda, which is order 20-12-08-05 in the matter of authorizing the county administrator to sign agreements with the City of Eugene and United Parcel Service, UPS, to approve an enterprise zone property tax exemption request. And with us is Austin Ramirez, our Community and Economic Development Manager, and he can introduce his guests. Take it away, Austin.
Good morning, Chair Buck and Commissioners. We do have a team of staff from our different agencies joining us today. So from the City of Eugene, we have Ann Fifield, the Economic Strategies Manager, and Amanda D'Souza, our Business Development Analyst at the City of Eugene. From UPS, we have Shane Simpson, Region Tax Manager, and Haley Peterson, Project Engineering Manager. So we're all available for questions. Amanda will be giving a presentation to discuss the project in greater detail. Before she starts, just a quick introduction on the item. This is an enterprise zone request from UPS. As Lane County is a co-sponsor of the West Eugene Enterprise Zone, the County Board of Commissioners must consider and take action in a case like this when an applicant requests a 2-year extension past the standard 3-year enterprise zone. So Amanda, with that, I'll let you take it from here with the presentation.
Thanks, Austin. I'm gonna figure out how to share my screen. Let's see. I guess I'm not sure which screen is being shared. Can you see a presentation?
Probably the other one.
Okay. Oh, I'm seeing more options. There we go. It's coming. Okay. Do you see a PowerPoint file?
Yep. There we go.
Okay. I'm not used to using GoToWebinar, so.
No worries.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for having us here today. So today I'm here to talk about United Parcel Services, better known to all of us as UPS. So after operating out of a leased building in Glenwood for over 40 years, UPS has decided to build a new $10 million facility in Eugene. The property is located in the West Eugene Enterprise Zone, and they've submitted an application for the tax exemption. In addition, they have requested the 2-year extension to the standard 3-year exemption period for a total of 5 years. As Austin mentioned, to get the 2-year extension, both sponsors, the City of Eugene and Lane County, must approve the request. Eugene City Council considered and approved the request in October, and today the Board of Commissioners is asked to consider the request, including the additional conditions UPS has agreed to should the request be approved. The resolution you're considering today would authorize the county administrator to enter into an agreement with UPS and the city for the 2-year extension. From what I understand, it's been a few years since you've heard about the Enterprise Zone, so I'll do a quick summary of the program. The Enterprise Zone is a state program designed to encourage job creation and local investment within the manufacturing and traded sectors. The program, which is authorized by the state, is one of the few tools we have locally to support these industries. It offers short-term property tax exemptions on new investments made by businesses that are growing their workforce. In short, it offers a 3-year exemption on property taxes made on investments in the zone boundary. So this map shows the eligible properties within the West Eugene Enterprise Zone. The eligible properties are in green. As you can see, they're mostly located in the industrial parts of town along 11th Avenue, Highway 99, and the Northwest Expressway. Investments can include new buildings and structures, modifications or additions, and installed machinery and equipment. Vehicles and personal property don't qualify, and the exemption only applies to new investments being made. The businesses still continue to pay property taxes on the land and any existing buildings. In order to be eligible for the program, eligible business activities include manufacturing, processing, distribution, and warehousing. Businesses must also increase their number of full-time permanent jobs by at least 10% by the time they file their first exemption claim. They must maintain this job growth throughout the exemption period. Finally, in addition to the basic program requirements, in the West Eugene Enterprise Zone, we have additional local criteria that businesses must meet to qualify for the full tax exemption. These criteria were last updated in 2017 by City Council and the board, and they encourage businesses to take steps towards achieving certain community goals and priorities, such as offering high wages, employee benefits, or taking steps to reduce their environmental impacts. There is also an exemption cap, which limits the amount of exemption a business can receive depending on the number of jobs created. Some examples of businesses that have participated in the West Eugene Enterprise Zone include Arcimoto, Yogi Tea, Strapworks, and Snowtemp. And since this iteration of the zone was designated by the city and county in 2005, 28 businesses have participated in the program, investing over $173 million and creating over 800 jobs. Currently, the zone averages an exemption of about $7,500 per job created. Now to today's topic. So UPS plans on building a new packaging and distribution center at a property located along Irving Road between Prairie Road on the west and Northwest Expressway and the railroad on the east. The property is located in the urban growth boundary and in the enterprise zone. However, it's not located within city limits. It's separated from the city only by the railroad tracks on the east, and there is an annexation agreement that runs with the land, meaning they'll have to annex when it's possible. As I mentioned, UPS has been operating their customer service center at a leased building in Glenwood. Construction of this new $10 million, 43,000 square foot facility will give UPS the ability to handle increased levels of package volume and would be a long-term investment in Eugene and the county. They will be moving their 68 Glenwood employees to this location and have committed to creating at least 7 jobs. UPS expects to begin operations at this building by September of 2021. Now on to the specific enterprise zone request. Once a business is approved for an enterprise zone, they will receive the standard 3-year exemption as long as they meet the basic requirements, which is the investment is eligible and that they increase their jobs by at least 10%. The state allows businesses to request an additional 2-year extension for a total of 5 years, and this request is subject to approval by the zone sponsors, so the city and county. We are here today because UPS requested the 2-year extension. While we won't know the exemption amount until the building is actually completed, we have estimated that UPS's exemption for years 1 through 3, the standard period, is about $213,000. The total estimated exemption for years 4 and 5 is $153,000. If UPS's request is approved, there are additional requirements they'll have to meet. These additional conditions are on top of the standard program requirements set by the state, including the increased employment. First, UPS will need to meet the state requirement for compensation. That is, the compensation for new employees must be greater than or equal to 150% of the county's average wage, which is currently about $65,600. In the additional 2 years, their wages must also be higher than this figure. The state built in this requirement to ensure that businesses who receive the additional exemption are creating good, high-wage jobs. Also, in recognition of the additional 2 years of exemption, UPS has agreed to contribute $50,000 and donate at least 2 vehicles to LCC's diesel technology program. The popular 2-year diesel technology program trains mechanics who go on to work at employers across the county at both private businesses and with public agencies, including City of Eugene, Lane County, school districts, and LTD. UPS's donation would directly support their classrooms. The $50,000 of funds would be used to expand the program's inventory of tools and equipment used in the classroom, and the vehicles would serve as lab training stations, allowing for hands-on practice. Now, as I mentioned before, UPS does still need to meet the standard enterprise zone requirements in addition to these conditions in order to receive the full 5-year tax exemption. And again, the resolution you're considering today would allow the city, county, and UPS to enter into an agreement consistent with the terms I just went over. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Austin before we open it up for some questions and answers.
Thank you, Amanda. So as she mentioned at the beginning of the item, after leasing a building in Lane County for 40 years in Glenwood, UPS choosing to construct their new facility here in Lane County and to remain here demonstrates their commitment to our community. They've been excellent partners throughout this process. So with that, in consideration of the high quality job opportunities created, the development of an underutilized property, the long-term tax revenue generated, and the benefits to LCC, staff recommends approval of the proposed UPS Enterprise Zone for an additional 2 years. We are available for any questions the board may have at this time.
Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Buck, and thank you, Ms. D'Souza, for the presentation. Austin, thank you. Just want to point out that the city of Eugene and Lane County back in 2016 employed a task force, an enterprise zone task force, and Ms. D'Souza, you were one of the administrators of the task force, and I'm presuming that this application is consistent with the findings and the recommendations that came out of that task force.
Yeah, so what that task force did is they reviewed that local additional criteria that I very briefly went over. So this is special to the West Eugene Enterprise Zone, and it basically outlines, I think, 9 different categories of criteria, and businesses that participate in an enterprise zone need to get a certain number of points. So they have to do a certain number of additional things in order to get the full tax exemption. If they don't meet that point criteria, they do have to potentially pay some of their exemption back. Luckily, most of our businesses have no trouble meeting those. I think that points to the quality of the businesses that participate in the enterprise zone that we have here.
And thank you for that summary, Mr. Souza. That was a pretty rigorous task force. We met a number of times and had long discussions regarding what points were going to be put forward as the points necessary for compliance with the enterprise zone. And it looks like UPS's application actually exceeds many of the requirements of the enterprise zone. And for the Board of Commissioners, that task force, which met in 2016 predominantly, it seems like far longer ago than that, since so many things have happened since. But that was a task force consisted of John Roberts, Jennifer McRaven, Leanne Hogue, Mark Johnson, and city councilors George Poling and Chris Pyer, and county commissioners Faye Stewart and I. And Mr. Souza, along with Denny Bro, Angelin Singh, and our own, at the time, Sarah Means, with the staff of that task force. I'm going to support this application. It is consistent and it does move forward in a positive way, even beyond the requirements of the enterprise zone. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Bray.
I'm against any jobs leaving Glenwood, but my understanding is the workforce will be maintained. Is the UPS representative with us today?
Yes. Yeah, we have Shane Simpson and Haley Peterson. They're both from UPS.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson and Ms. Peterson. So my understanding is that I'm presuming that UPS's decision to make this move is not dependent upon 2 years past the first 3 years of the enterprise zone exemption. It's just that why not try and see what we can get to support this? Am I correct, or is my analysis way too simple?
Commissioner Byrne, thank you for your question. Well, incentives are going to be viewed by our management team as necessary, and if we are able to obtain the 5-year incentive, that is what would be important to our management team. We seek to obtain short-term incentives in order to keep project costs such as this as low as possible. There is a lot of capital outlay up front that we have to pay to do an expansion project like this, and in controlling our costs, keeping our costs low, it helps us to ensure our high quality, time definite delivery service, which, you know, benefits the community and businesses, especially those small and medium sized businesses.
Understood. My understanding is that this is a $10 million build. If I heard correctly, it's due to be completed and operational by the end of next year. So again, so the question really related to, I 1,000%, by the way, I'm not questioning moving forward. I just want to get a tad granular. I 1,000% approve the enterprise zone designation, the 3-year $213,000 exemption. I'm just wondering how critical to operations the $153,000 exemption, which means that's property taxes that a low revenue county post-COVID would not get. So I'm just saying, I just am trying to understand how critical that is to the overall picture. And then if I may, a second question is UPS still, first I'll let you answer that question, and then I have one more question. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for your follow-up question. I mean, our management team does view these incentives as critical, and they also view the incentives as entering a partnership with the county and the city, because we do bring those important transportation and delivery services to the community, especially during COVID times. Our business was designated by the government as part of the critical infrastructure, and our employees are essential workers because we are so important to the community. And I think the city and county, through a program like this, recognizes that the long-term benefit to the community because of the union high-paying jobs that we're bringing brings opportunity to the residents, and the capital investment does offer the community, the city and county, new forms of revenue that they'll benefit from our capital investment.
I understand. I absolutely believe in the partnership. The partnership is going to occur whether years 4 and 5 are approved or not. Is UPS, in full transparency, a good friend of mine used to negotiate on behalf of the Teamsters, Joint Council 7, the Western United States contracts with UPS. At that time, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, UPS was wall-to-wall Teamster. Is that still the case?
Yes, sir. The Teamsters govern the labor agreement with our operation folks. Yes.
Last question. I will be voting for this. It's like I have to always preface that because people are going, "Why are you asking these questions?" But I'm going to request for the record that management, who you've referred to, consider a hybrid exemption for years 4 and 5 if books allow it, where it might be 50% of the total exemption, even though I will be voting to approve this whole thing. And I would also request that management look at the community benefits protocols that Lane County has put in place and cannot require of any other entity. Nonetheless, we put in place for our construction projects to increase community benefits, not inconsistent with what UPS has already committed to, and consider that if any of those might apply, that you might incorporate those. And that's the end of my comments, Chair. Thank you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernie, one other thing I'd add, if I may, to your question. That additional 2 years does give the county and the city room to negotiate for additional benefits, like what has been negotiated to help benefit LCC, as well as some of the additional pieces there. So I think that's just something important to note for the 2 years. It does benefit the applicant, obviously, but it also opens the door for our region to ask for additional benefits on behalf of the community.
Well, only because Austin is one of my constituents now, I have to secede to him and agree with your points, sir. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you. And I'm fully in support of this exemption. I believe that these ability to do these exemptions stimulates capital investment in our community. And as long as the entity requesting the exemptions is meeting the requirements of those exemptions, I'm not going to get too detailed with questioning what business they're in or anything else, because I want to make sure we're doing these in an unprejudiced manner and just supplying the exemptions per state requirements. I will say, though, that I really appreciate United Parcel Service and their services as a co-owner and kind of silent partner in my wife's business. We see a brown truck about once a day out here in Elmira, and I'll be happy that they're expanding their ability to serve us. Their number of employees they're adding doesn't count in all the employees they support throughout the community in small businesses like ours in the ability to get deliveries right at our front door. And it's great that I see the same driver day after day on the route out here, unlike one of their competitors where we never get the same driver twice and we have to search for wherever the package ends up along our fence line. You guys get it right. So my compliments to you. You guys are doing a great job. I have one quick question, and Haley might be able to answer this. The location you're looking at has some interesting traffic constraints to it. Have you guys looked at the impacts of the short line rail crossing there at Irving and 99 and how that closes down for significant time periods, as well as the other rail crossing that can close and your access in only one direction to Beltline from Prairie Road? Is that all been taken into consideration in your choice of this site? You're muted, Haley.
During this pause, let it be noted, Commissioner Bozievich is trying to talk UPS out of this site.
Yeah.
If anybody's there to respond from UPS, that would be great. Well, unfortunately,
I will assume that they've made the necessary traffic studies to justify that this will work for them. I just, as this is my district, and I'm very happy that that Commissioner Bernie's losing a few jobs and I'm gaining a few in my district. But I am really aware of those intersections right there as I travel through them on a regular basis coming in from Elmira. And they can be kind of tricky. And I had a little bit of concern when I saw that all their access is to Prairie Road and that then their ultimate access to the rest of the county might have to deal with those railroad crossings and the one-way access to Beltline.
Haley, are you available to talk now? She was muted, double muted.
Yeah.
Ah, darn.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was double muted and couldn't get off of it, but appreciate the question. So I believe we did do an analysis. There was a traffic study, I believe, done by our consultant. I did come into this project a little bit later, so it was with another engineer prior to, but I believe I do have the documentation to support that a traffic analysis was completed by UPS to ensure that we wouldn't disrupt the city of Eugene or Lane County with our additional traffic that we will have at this facility.
Great. Well, I really appreciate that. And if the chair doesn't mind, I would like to move to approve the order 20-120805.
Second.
Great. Moved by Commissioner Bozievich, second by Commissioner Berney. Any discussion? Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be voting in favor of this motion. I think that the way the program has been structured to provide for community benefits is a really worthy improvement in the overall functioning of the enterprise zone as we have evolved it over time. And in particular, I want to comment on the diesel technology program, which is an excellent program at LCC and provides a lot of great training, and the industry, including UPS, that uses trucks or fixes trucks or sells trucks or is involved with trucking, has really been a big supporter of the program. And it's a very well-paid occupation that when the people get into it and they get trained for it, it really is a lifetime, and it really is a life changer for many of the people that do the work. So I want to thank everyone involved in the process. I also wanted to add something from a larger perspective, and that is for the commissioners that will be continuing in office after January. And by the way, for you folks from UPS, that doesn't include me, but it includes all 4 of our colleagues. I just want to point out that tax reform that may be coming in the next session of the legislature may involve the tax reductions that are given to the people in the enterprise system. And just to acquaint you with the sort of dynamic is that many people, when they're running for elective office, they campaign in favor of better funding of public education. By approving this today, we are going to be reducing the amount of property tax money that goes into public education, because education is the biggest single, beneficiary of our property tax system. So keep in mind that there are people out there that view reform as needed to make sure that public education is funded. Now, the way the drafters of our enterprise zone laws have worked with this have been to say that the general fund of the state of Oregon will replace the revenue to the school districts, revenue lost through programs like this. But I just want to remind our commissioners that in their work with AOC and their support of enterprise zone, that it can be at odds against the overall sort of legislative picture to make sure that public education is funded not only by means of income taxes, but also by means of property taxes. So, but like I said, in light of everything, I'm going to be voting yes. And I just want to say that I have a large number of small businesses in my district, and UPS is really a great partner and ally of those small businesses, and they provide excellent customer service, and a lot of businesses really depend on UPS. And we're going to miss the old Glenwood facility, but this new facility is going to be even better for the community. Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. And Commissioner Sorensen brings up a couple of good points regarding the school, the state school fund and how property tax funds that. A point regarding property tax exemptions, and first a point and then a question for Ms. D'Souza. In tax increment financing, such as that is provided by urban renewal districts, and having served as a urban renewal agent for 10 years, and Commissioner Burney currently are an urban renewal agent. The tax exemptions provided by tax increment financing, the increase in value of the property is spread out across the urban renewal district. So the taxes are paid as the value increases. Now, with an enterprise zone, and this is a question for you for clarification and for confirmation, Ms. D'Souza, the taxes are actually exempted. So it's not spread out and paid by the entire district. The taxes are exempted, but it's not an exemption from taxes that are currently being paid. It's an exemption from taxes that would have been paid by the increased value in the property. Is that a correct characterization of the difference between an enterprise zone and an urban renewal district?
Yes, and maybe Anne can chime in with probably better explained answer, but basically the current taxes are going to keep being paid. So there isn't a reduction in the property taxes collected. It's just deferring the new taxes that are generated. So in 3 or 5 years, that there will be that increase seen.
Yep,
Thank
that's
you.
correct. He's got it.
And that confirms what I've thought about that, because tax increment financing, once again, the taxing district does still collect the taxes from the increased value in the properties, whereas in an urban renewal district, the taxing districts do not receive the taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Bernie.
Oh, I just thought I would contribute this to getting even further off topic. Just a granular remediation. The whole notion of deferring taxes, I agree with what Commissioner Farr said. You're only temporarily deferring taxes based on the improvements you've made to the parcel, which over time will generate significant more taxes. And that's the thinking behind things like a MUPD or an enterprise zone or that nature. It's a mechanism to attract private investment, and that private investment has as much, if not more, desire to keep being successful and sustain itself as we as a taxing district have for it to be so. So I'm going to move the question.
All right. I think we've talked this one out. So at this point, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're going to move back to our COVID-19 update with Ms. Gabney, our Health and Human Services Director, and perhaps some other folks. Please introduce yourself if you're speaking.
Chair, I'm going to double check with Ms. Gaffney to see if...
I see her.
Do you see her? Okay, I can't see her on my screen. Well, she's here then.
I am here. I am
okay, there we go.
on getting my screen up, and we'll see if I get the correct screen visible. Okay, how are we doing? Oh, okay. Any sign of my screen?
I see blue.
Okay, looks like it's trying again. Okay, well, perhaps I will just start without, I'll try one other thing. Do we have a PowerPoint up yet? No, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and start without, oh, there we go. This initial slide should look familiar to you. I'm actually going to start by addressing the questions that came up in public comment so that I don't forget to come back to those. And then I'll go through my regular update. And I appreciate Mr. McAllister, as always, being a really fantastic advocate for those in our community who are unhoused, and to have the opportunity to clarify for the board and the community the pieces that are currently in place for testing for people in that community. And certainly this has been a moving target over the course of the pandemic. And often when we talk about testing, it's important to be clear. There's different opportunities and needs for people who are symptomatic, people who are asymptomatic. So I'm going to try and cover both of those pieces. So for people who are symptomatic in the community, we typically encourage people to go to their provider, go to NOVA for testing, and certainly urgent cares and emergency departments offer testing as well. Mr. McAllister raised the issue of NOVA requiring identification, and I will track back around to them to confirm if that's true and if they intend to continue that policy. There are other options in the community for people who are unhoused, might not have identification, and are symptomatic and need a COVID test. So one certainly is to reach out to their medical provider and have a order written for McKinsey-Willamette and go to McKinsey-Willamette for testing. That resource has been available in our community for a long time, and I'm really grateful to the U of O and the hospital for providing that. We also have partners in the community. Whitebird is offering testing through their clinic. Occupy Medical offers testing through their services. So those are a couple options. And of course, emergency departments and urgent cares are available as well. So those are options that are available for people who are symptomatic, and we certainly wouldn't want them to delay a long time in getting testing. In our community, we also offer opportunities for testing for people who are not symptomatic, and that is a new addition to our testing array in the community. And I want to again appreciate the University of Oregon, who has opened up their testing program on campus to allow individuals from the community, and that's, you know, whether you're housed or unhoused, to be able to sign up and have tests done at Matthew Knight Arena and at Matt Court as sites. And those links to those testing opportunities are on our website, the COVID webpage, along with information about testing events that Lane County Public Health is offering in the community. This week we have 3 of those opportunities, and no identification is required at any of the testing sites that I know of. And I will double check with Nova to see if they are still requiring that.
Ms. Gaffney? Just to let you know, if it looks like our moderator has your agenda on the screen, so you'll need to let her know if you want to move it to the next one.
Thank you very much, Chair Buck. So I think that's, oh, and the other piece I would add, there's been lots of conversation in the community about rapid testing. All the testing opportunities I just talked about are PCR testing, and so there is a wait for those results to come back. Not as long a wait as there used to be, but there certainly is a wait. And we have been working with a number of providers, as I've mentioned to the board in the past, to place the Binex Now rapid tests that are made available to us from the federal government through the state. And in addition to primary care settings and first responders, we have been specifically working to place some of those in community-based organizations that serve the homeless community. So I know Occupy Medical, part of the issue with those is you do need to have an affiliation with a CLIA lab and have some paperwork filed. So Dr. Ledke has been working with Occupy Medical to place those tests with them so that they do have a rapid test opportunity. And again, those are for people who are symptomatic. My understanding is that that paperwork has now been completed, and so hopefully we'll get state approval for that soon and be able to add that additional resource to the testing array that's available in the community. So with that, again, the 5 elements that are on the screen in front of you are our collective strategies and plan for responding to COVID. Item number 3 is the one that the county administrator mentioned that Austin Ramirez is going to be giving an update on later during county administrator announcements. So I'm not going to focus on that item, but I'm going to try and move pretty quickly through our other elements of the plan to give you a high level update. And then as always, I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you might have. So Diana, if you want to give me the next slide. So this, as you know, we in Oregon have moved to a common framework of how we think about risk and protective factors around COVID. So rather than phases, we now have this particular framework from the governor's office, and it is available on our website if the community wants to know what our specific data is, how we compare to the state, and what the rules are given what category we fall into. Again, you can look for this graphic on our COVID page, and that will allow you to connect to the state data and the state system to do a deeper dive into what it means for our community. And if you hover over the counties, it will show you the data. So it's important for me to say from the beginning, we are in the extreme category in Lane County right now. And that is specifically because of our number of cases. It's not because of our positivity rate. We're doing lots of good testing, but it is absolutely because of the cases that we have in the community. So Diana, if you'll go to the next slide. One of the elements of our plan is public information and data transparency. So if you haven't been on our website lately, I did want to lift up for members of the board and the community some of the work we've been doing to increase the access to data for members in the community. As we've moved through the pandemic, we've collected more and more data, and I know the community is very interested in understanding exactly what's happening here in Lane County. So this is now the new view you'll get on our data page, and each of these Tableau visualizations are clickable on the website and allow you to do a deeper dive into the particular area that's mentioned there. And that first one that's labeled Daily Report is has all the information that I think the community is accustomed to being able to find on our website and be able to track what's happening in terms of our cases, hospitalizations, testing, and other information on a daily basis. So Diana, if you go to the next page, one of the things you can click on is school metrics, and I am lifting that up today, not only to talk about schools, but just because it happens to be the same data that the governor is using to determine what risk category a county falls into. So this is a nice visualization of our case rates and our test positivity rate. And in this visualization, Lane County is the blue line. So you can see certainly our blue line has been increasing. And in the most recent data, we are at 291.1 new cases per 100,000 over that 2-week period. So that's what that particular bar means. And this graph also gives you an opportunity to compare, even knowing how hard it is right now in Lane County, it shows where we are compared to the state average as well. So it anchors our data in the context of the state of Oregon. And then I know many of you are tracking in the news nightly. We see that map of the country, and we can see the color of the state of Oregon versus other parts of the country. So certainly our rates have been increasing, and we are in an extreme COVID state with disease widespread in the community. And we are doing better than much of the state of Oregon. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the positivity rate, and it's a similar story. Our positivity rate has increased as the disease spread has increased. And in the most recent data for that 2-week period, we were at 4%. But we still are below 5%, which is our target as a community to really know that we're doing sufficient testing in the community in order to accurately assess where we are with disease level in the community. So Diana, let's go to the next slide. This is our graph that we look at each time, our epi curve. And when I sent this note out to our staff earlier in the week, I mentioned that you don't have to be an epidemiologist to look at this and know that things are not good in the community. And I know we've talked about this in the past, that as cases get widespread, as disease is widespread in the community, it really is going to take longer for us to be able to see that come back down again. Because as each case infects other people, it's going to take not only concerted effort in the community, but some time to begin to drive those rates down. We know that we were in a high risk from Thanksgiving, and nationally, we saw data about the number of people who traveled. And we know even in our own state and community, there were some people who chose to have gatherings despite the governor's guidance. And so we are continuing to see the results of that Thanksgiving that have been coming through this week and will probably come through the next week or so as that moves through the system. When we're on this slide, I do want to give you just an update from this morning's numbers of where we are in the community. Yesterday, we did pass the 5,000 mark. On this particular chart, I grabbed it from yesterday's data, so it's at 5,027. As of this morning, it's actually up to 5,132 cases in Lane County since the beginning of the pandemic. As of this morning, we had 494 people who were infectious in the community. 46 of those people were in the hospital, and 9 of those people in the hospital were in the intensive care unit. And we've had 59 deaths in the community since the beginning of the pandemic due to COVID. We have 598 people in our community who are under monitoring right now. So those are individuals who are close contacts of people who are positive for COVID and who have been contacted by us and agreed to daily phone calls and monitoring for symptoms. And of those 598 people, 91 people have a preferred language of Spanish. So that gives you a sense of who we're having daily contact with as we do our work. An important part of our plan for COVID is to ensure that healthcare providers, first responders, and hospitals have what they need. And I know this has been an ongoing concern for all of us to make sure that in particular our hospitals and our healthcare delivery system are able to not be overwhelmed by COVID. And I will tell you that hospitals are certainly feeling this increased burden of disease in their institutions. But as of our conversations yesterday, both McKinsey-Willamette and Peace Health report that they are holding their own and stable and have what they need at this point. We do continue to monitor that very closely. And I know that the hospitals are working with each other as well to make sure that as a community, we have access to hospital care that we need. All right, let's go to the last slide. I wanted to spend a little bit of time focused on our flu and vaccination planning because that really is our light at the end of the tunnel, not flu, but COVID vaccination planning. We know that that is ultimately how we will be able to move through the end of the pandemic. We have been doing significant work on planning for COVID and also working to make sure that people in the community have access to and choose to get their flu vaccine. So I will take this moment to remind people, if you have not had your flu shot yet, there is still time to do that. There is widespread availability of flu vaccine in the community, and it's just really critically important that we both keep people well, because that's always important. But this year in particular, we want to protect our hospitals. And we know that if we prevent flu, which is a vaccine preventable disease, that will help our hospitals be able to stay open and stable during this period. On Saturday, we worked with the City of Eugene and eWeb to sponsor a drive-through flu vaccine clinic in the parking lot at eWeb. I know the county administrator earlier mentioned that the parking lot at Lane Event Center is also a place that we anticipate using for drive-through vaccination clinics. This gave us the opportunity to really map that parking lot, understand what the traffic flow would be. We had great support from Search and Rescue out there helping us in the parking lot. So that went well. Not only did we have an opportunity to practice for our COVID vaccine, but we were able to get about 250 flu vaccines into individuals from the community. So that was a great event. And we are eagerly awaiting FDA action this week, which I think everyone anticipates will be approval of the emergency use authorization for the first of the COVID vaccines. And there's been lots of media attention around this, and I will certainly allow enough time for question and discussion from the board. At a high level, I would say the plan is coordinated largely through the state with federal partners, and then some clear and specific roles for local public health as we move through this. First priority for the vaccine is referred to as priority 1A, and that's healthcare workers and people who reside in long-term care facilities and the staff who care for them. So this first batch of vaccine that is expected to come out as early as late this week will be directed to hospitals who are responsible for assisting with healthcare workers, and then pharmacies who are partnering with our long-term care facilities. So that's the primary delivery system for priority 1A vaccines. Again, we expect as early as later this week, but certainly through the month of December, we will begin, we in Oregon will begin to see our shipments, and then we in Lane County will get those shipments as well. The priority populations are defined by the federal and state partners. So that is not a role for local public health, but we do have an important role in the distribution of those vaccines and actually getting them into people's arms. So from our perspective, we anticipate as early as January, we may start to see that the priority 1A populations have been vaccinated, and vaccine will begin to be available for priority 1B. And those are the essential workers. And exactly what that means is still to be identified by the state of Oregon. We have some guesses based on conversations at the CDC and ACIP, but the final definition will come to us from the state. And once that is available and the vaccine comes through, we will be working with our local partners on distribution. So that means clinics and as well as pop-up clinics, pods, not only here in Eugene, Springfield, but throughout the county, to be able to identify and quickly vaccinate people in those priority populations. As part of that work, we're convening a local advisory group of key partners to help make sure, not only on the logistics side, but on the communication side, that we are really clear and efficient with our community so that we're able to get those vaccinations delivered. And I'm going to end with just a little bit of a math exercise. And I'm looking in particular at Commissioner Bozovich, because I know the numbers are always important to him, but I think that's true for all of you. Dr. Ludke has done a back of the envelope prediction equation for us in terms of setting our targets for this distribution work, and basically started with 387,000 people who live in Lane County. About 74% of us are adults. This vaccine is targeted for adults at this point. So that means there are about 290,000 people who are eligible for the vaccine. What we know for this specific disease is that we need about 70% of people to be vaccinated in order to achieve herd immunity. So our goal is to get 70% of those adults vaccinated. So that means that about 200,000 people would need this vaccine. And if we look at vaccination, again, it's a 2-dose vaccine. So that means that we would need to deliver about 1,500 shots every working day, 5 days a week, for 52 weeks in order to achieve that. So if we want to get that done faster, we need to deliver more than 1,500 shots a day. But that gives you a sense of what our workload looks like moving into what is really an amazing operation to be able to deliver this much needed vaccine to the community. So Chair Buck, I think I will leave it at that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, you finish up with the big number at the end of what you and Health and Human Services actually have to deliver to the community, and that's an amazing amount of shots in a day. Hopefully that means that the other doctors and health providers in the community are doing them as well, not just H&HS through maybe these public drive-throughs.
Yes, thank you, Chair Buck. Absolutely, that's our community target. So that includes the amazing workforce we anticipate mobilizing of healthcare providers who will be doing that in clinic sites, pharmacies who will be helping. We have EMTs who will be able to deliver vaccine. Dr. Ludke has been talking with the Dental Society. Dentist offices are now able to deliver vaccine. So yes, it will be a community-wide mobilization effort to deliver those shots.
That's an immense project to get through for our community to be safe. Are there any questions or comments from Ms. Gaffney, Commissioner Bozovich, and then Commissioner Soren?
Thank you, and I love the numbers, Karen. But yeah, like you said, there's every pharmacy probably from Walgreens to Bimart is going to probably have the ability to issue the vaccine in our community. So hopefully, if we've got 150 or so or more providers, they're only having to issue 10 a day personally. To hit that 1,500, and hopefully they can issue 20 a day, and we can actually do this faster. I want to address some numbers as long as we're talking numbers, because there's been something going around Facebook that leads people to believe this is not serious. And it's a listing of the last 5 years of total deaths in Oregon, and then showing the deaths to year to date in 2020 and kind of claiming that there's hasn't been excess death. The problem with that is that the year-to-date number that's in that Facebook post only goes through October. If you go back to the actual data issued by the state, you find that that's only through October. And if you do the divide it by 10, multiply times 12 to do an annual number, it actually projects to be a little over 1,000 excess deaths compared to the last 5-year trend. Lo and behold, we have 1,045 deaths in this state as of yesterday from COVID. So folks, please don't accept that Facebook post as being truthful. It doesn't present the statistics correctly. We are looking at a disease that's causing excess deaths in our community, and it's serious. So we want to continue to take the precautions we need to take, masking up, social distancing, wash your hands, all that good stuff. That all said, I'm still disappointed in the governor's new risk matrix, how it's being rolled out, and the lack of science driving the restrictions behind it. First of all, rolling it out by county totally ignores counties like Lane County that have areas that are separated from our hot zones, so to speak. Oak Ridge and Florence have little interconnectivity with Eugene Springfield. They're distanced by quite a bit, yet if you look at by zip code data, they would never qualify as extreme. And in fact, if you look at coastal counties, they're all in a different category than us. It also makes me wonder if we're below all the statewide averages in both test positivity and cases per 100,000, how we are extreme. And in fact, our increase in cases is not growing as fast as the statewide average. So there's obviously counties that are growing faster than the statewide average, yet we're the ones, being held to these extreme restrictions. I still have yet to hear of a outbreak tied to a fitness center in Lane County. All the restrictions around fitness centers are based on a presumption that folks breathing hard might spread it. Yet we don't have any actual case tracing to fitness centers to show that that presumption's correct. So it's, you know, that being scientific just bothers me. So COVID's very serious. Folks take it seriously. We are seeing excess deaths, almost dead matching on to the COVID deaths here in the state of Oregon. But I also want to see science drive what we're doing, because without science driving restrictions, we're causing economic damage and untold other health impacts, from suicide to drug overdoses to mental health issues to, you know, possible homelessness for folks that have been out of work whenever this, you know, we lift the prohibition on folks losing their housing. I want to see us drive restrictions with scientific data, where we're actually seeing folks transmit the disease, not just because we think they might transmit it somewhere. And I also would love to see it more driven by much smaller regions than an entire county that is as diverse as Lane County, where we're shutting down Florence over the excess cases we're seeing in Eugene, Springfield, which you might be able to tie to some places that haven't gotten any restrictions placed on them, and I won't mention them by name. But if you want to, yeah, I don't really have a question for Karen so much as I just have a desire that we start driving our preventive work by data, and data on transmissions and actual transmissions and outbreaks, not by presumed reasons why we should shut a business down.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Sorensen, and then Commissioner Burney, and then Commissioner Farr. You all kind of put it up, your hands up at the same time.
Well, thank you. While I appreciate the numbers, I don't love the numbers. I hate the numbers. And that is because people are dying from a disease that can be prevented from additional spreading. And people are dying in great numbers. We have had a great deal of confusion on the part of messaging, and we could point to our current president, President Trump, who in part lost the election over his failure to take the disease seriously. But we can also point to medical professionals like Dr. Stephen LaTulip, who was an Oregon doctor, is an Oregon doctor, licensed doctor, who appeared at the Stop the Steal rally, which was a rally held in Salem shortly after the popular vote for president was announced. And he said that he did not believe people should wear masks, that he doesn't require masks in his clinic. Several of his patients reported that they were told to take their masks off in the clinic. And this is not in some foreign place. This is in the Dallas, Oregon, just up the Willamette River or down the Willamette River from us. He made all these statements in November, and it wasn't until he got onto national news, NBC News featured him. And a few days after he was on the national news saying all these things, the Oregon Board of Medical Examiners revoked immediately an emergency revocation of his medical license, which I'm glad they did. But why didn't they do it as soon as they found out that he was doing these things a month earlier? To me, these mixed messages from leaders, whether they are elected officials like President Trump, or whether they are members of Congress that support his views, or whether they are voters or people in society or medical doctors themselves. And I believe there was a registered nurse recently who was investigated for her statements that this was all a big hoax. So I just wanted to conclude by saying that I believe that more should be done. I'm really pleased with the efforts of our staff to try to implement the policies of the state government as they interpret them and do what they can under the authorities of the state. And I'll just leave it at that as to whether there's additional things that could be considered. I also want to echo the view that we should let science guide these decisions. For example, many of our restrictions, well, of course, we have no local restrictions, but many of the state restrictions that have to do with let's say, gyms or restaurants or whatever, they seem to be in conflict with the apparent, and I'm saying this myself, but the apparent view that the small family gatherings, the social gatherings, not just family, but the small social gatherings and large social gatherings are the culprit here. And that Dr. Fauci recently was on the national news saying that the New York governor's requirement that gatherings in homes not exceed 10 people was in fact too large. So again, I'd like to see government policy aimed at where the problems are. And you've heard me talk about airplanes. Well, airplanes don't cause COVID, and maybe even people in airplanes don't cause COVID to spread. But what airplanes do is allow people to get around the country really fast and then go to social gatherings. And that's why they're going around the country. And so to me, looking at the tracing and looking at where the disease is spreading and then making the restrictions that are appropriate for that. If there's not been enough masking, let's do something about that. If there's been too many small gatherings, let's do something about that. And so these are some of my comments, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I won't go into some of my own suggestions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Berney.
Well, Karen, it doesn't sound like you've been offered too many opportunities to ask questions. I'm going to pontificate also, but I also will ask you some questions. First, I would like to state, that as someone who takes 4 shots a day and who has had over 80,000 shots to be here of insulin, I would like to propose that our public health system determine a way to condense the herd immunity vaccinations from a figure of 1,500 shots a day would take us a year to how we can do that in 3 or 4 months. I don't think that's overwhelming. I think when we talk about pharmacies, dentist's office, doctor's offices, et cetera, there's an infrastructure that can be mobilized. And England is beginning that today. And so I don't know what's possible you do, and I'm not trying to tell you what's possible, but I believe we should strive to reach that level with integrity as soon as possible. And I will gladly take 2 more shots in my regimen to experience some sort of immunity. Number 2, when I heard and read Mr. McAllister's points, I can't get into anything but what would be a solution here, and that to me kind of relates to what is the status of Lane County having 1 or more mobile testing units so that some of these issues could be resolved very handily. That's the question, Karen.
Thank you, Chair Buck and Vice Chair Berney. 2 things. I wanted to address your first comment in terms of taking a year. I absolutely agree that we don't want to take a year. One of the constraints will be about the vaccine supply as it comes to us. So clearly that's probably more than anything else going to impact our response, and we absolutely will mobilize broadly the workforce in order to get those shots delivered as the supply reaches us. In terms of mobile testing units, I think so. What I have heard is that the state is working with some of the community-based organizations to support that sort of a concept. What we have right now is a version of that. I would say the surveillance testing that Lane County Public Health has been doing since the beginning of the pandemic, where we take the shots to different sites across the county, is a version of mobile testing. That's how we've been able to get out into the rural communities. We have testing events that target the Latinx community this week. So we are mobile in that way. It's not a van, but it is a pop-up that gets set in different locations to reach the community more effectively. And then I think the other piece is to look at, I lost my own thread there, Commissioner Burney.
It's
in
never
terms of being
happened to
able
me.
to provide that access for people. I think Occupy Medical has been providing a version of that as well. Again, it's not a van that necessarily travels, but it is, from our estimation, making sure that we have access to testing in lots of different places. So it's not only McKenzie-Willamette Hospital, but lots of different places.
Absolutely. We're doing our best. I believe that literally vans or station wagons or whatever driving to where people are that don't have access to going to central or diverse locations is a part. I'm suggesting it might even be part of the whole vaccination protocol, actually, when you go to the hardest to reach individuals and areas. So I would just like to put that out there, and not in a demanding or a critical way, but I really believe that is a part of the process. I know that in the city of San Francisco, delivering regular healthcare services to the homeless and to many of their poor was in fact achieved a number of years ago. So I think it's something we ought to look at. Finally, there have been a couple of comments made about science driving response. I can't imagine anyone adverse to that. I can tell you that there are so many costs and benefits here. I am suffering personally by not being able to go to my gym, truly, because that's part of diabetic self-management. I'm aware of several small business owners in Springfield. One has 9,000 square feet, does personal training, has required masks, will now not train more than 4 people at one time, and stays at least 20 feet away from everyone. And he was told he has to close. So there are obviously going to be, I know this is not our decision, this is a state decision. There are obviously going to be things we disagree with, and I think we should always input those decisions that are made at the state level. Having said that, I'm also aware of protests being planned to have restaurants open in certain parts of a town, and raising money to pay the fines for the restaurants that are violating the law. I think that's to be anticipated, but it's really much ado about nothing. And yet it's about everything, right? It's about our ability to live our life as normally as possible. Having said all that, there's no science behind whether we drive on the left side of the road or the right side of the road, but we all have to be on the same page. My input to the state when I was asked to be the promoter of their version of how this needs to occur was, I don't agree with all of your strategies here. So I won't be the promoter, but I will absolutely be the facilitator, because we all have to be on the same page, even if we disagree with aspects of what that page is, at least for the next few months. So that's my last statement. Karen, it's very clear from the data. I don't know if it's luck or if it's the good work of your department, but Oregon is in better shape for being bad than much of the rest of the nation. Lane County is in better shape for being bad than much of the rest of the state. I thank you so much for that. And I would like us, my sense is that we're in the last hurrah of this thing. And could you speak at all to the next few months before this vaccine is widespread and what you want us to do just to get through to the light at the end of the tunnel? And I'm done. Thank you, Chair, for so much time.
Chair Buck and Vice Chair Berney, I appreciate you ending with that question because I do think it's critically important to manage expectations as we move through the next several months. And I believe when Dr. Ludke was here last week, he probably said this to you all and the community as well, that when the vaccine arrives, that doesn't instantly flip the switch. We are going to be living with COVID for months as we move through the process of getting the vaccine out into people's arms. It's critically important that people be vigilant and buckle down for the last part of this to really wear your mask everywhere at this point, whenever you leave your house, to wear your mask, stay physically distanced. Those are the strategies, along with hand washing, that we know are going to make the difference. It's important that we don't do our typical group celebrations as we move through this holiday season, that we just prepare ourselves for the next several months, that we need to be vigilant about public health measures to get us through. People in Lane County have worked hard up until now, and I know have made a lot of sacrifices. And we probably are going to be in this, until summer before we have broad distribution of the vaccine. So it's really important that we finish out this strong with discipline around those public health measures and protect our hospitals. And hopefully, the goal is to bring our case numbers down out of this extreme category so that we can begin to get kids back in school. That's really important for their learning. And I think the objective for all of us in the community, as far as the why do we need to do that, it's about protecting our hospitals for all of us and getting our kids back in school.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Buck. Thank you, Ms. Gaffney. And thanks to Commissioner Bozovich and Commissioner Berney for asking many of the questions that make it so I don't have to ask questions. And thanks for the answers. I do have a long list of questions, however, Ms. Gaffney. However, that being said, I'm looking at our website and under frequently asked questions, most of my questions are answered. And I think want to commend you and staff for making certain that most of the questions that the public would like to have answered are actually provided. The answers are actually provided on our website. So thank you for that. There is one item that continues to come up, and this really is associated with COVID. When people drive into town or people who live in town, they see gatherings of people, unhoused people in tents with large piles of debris around the gatherings where they're camping. Now, the city of Eugene's moving some of the camps along right now, and many of the camps actually are outside of the city limits. My question isn't regarding how do we move people along. I'm not interested in that in particular, because a part of COVID-19 protocol is making sure that people aren't spreading throughout the community, that people are staying in place as much as possible. My question is, how do we, and this really is COVID related because it's related to these camps that have sprung up in along Beltline Road, at West 11th and Beltline Road, for instance, and a number of other places outside of the urban growth boundary. Do we have any means in place to require people to keep the debris contained around their camps? When you drive along West 11th right now, you see the camp that is right there next to Walmart. Walmart's erected a big fence, I believe, so they don't drift into their parking lot. But it really is, I mean, there's a lot of trash around that, which We all know trash like that attracts vermin. We all know trash like that is unhealthy, and we are the health department. What can we do? What can I personally do? And what can we as a board do to further the requirement that camps be kept clean, even though we aren't requiring people to move along?
Chair Buck and Commissioner Farr, I appreciate the question. My ability to answer is somewhat limited, so I'm going to start, and then if the county administrator has any additional information, I'm not as familiar with what the resources are from our Public Works Department. In terms of limiting debris and trash, I know that that has been an issue in a number of unsanctioned campsites that have sprung up. And in terms of strategies that are used nationally to help address that, you know, a piece of it is making sure that we regularly offer opportunities, you know, bring dumpsters over, do regular visits to be able to collect trash that's accumulating in those sites. So that's a strategy that has been used in many communities as a policy option to mitigate that risk that happens in those spontaneous camps. You referenced the guidance that is applicable during COVID, and it's very true that the CDC, in terms of a balancing of risk, has asked that communities not disrupt unsanctioned campsites unless there is a significant public safety or public health reason to do that. And I know that's a balance that we've all been working hard to maintain, and to make sure that those elements that are often a nuisance for neighbors can be addressed without actually disrupting where people are able to live during this time. So, so I don't know, Steve, if you have other things to add on that.
Well, just to say that typically we will address issues, the county will address issues if they're in county right of way, in unincorporated areas of the county or along county roadways, or on county property, and that has happened from time to time. I'm not aware that there are any camps that exist on county-related property. Certainly there are. I mean, I know, for example, at 18th and Chambers, there's a number of individuals and tents and debris in the right-of-way on 18th Street that cause both potentially health and certainly safety concerns. I know that the city of Eugene, I think as Karen mentioned, the city of Eugene is trying to balance the health and safety of those individuals, the health and safety of the neighbors in the surrounding area, with those types of gatherings or encampments, as well as be mindful of the public health challenges with moving people and the disruption of that. And so while the city has done some of those moves, they also have been, to my knowledge, careful about working with our public health and trying not to move folks if they don't need to. So that's, I don't know if that helps, Commissioner, but it is many of the issues that we see they're either on city-owned property or they're within the city limits, where the city is the jurisdiction to deal with both the debris issues as well as the traffic safety related issues. And then our role as a public health authority is to provide advice and counsel and support to the municipal authorities particularly as it relates to the pandemic that we have, but also just to general health measures.
Thank you, Steve. That is only partially helpful, and it only partially addresses the issues that I am hearing about. A lot of this is outside of city limits, so there's no city jurisdiction. And while I'm perfectly understanding of the passing the buck along to other jurisdictions if it's inside their jurisdiction, as a Board of Health, when people point out to me that it's an unhealthy situation in the county and that they feel that we have a responsibility to keep the rats down, that we have a responsibility to keep other kinds of disease from spreading, I have a difficulty saying, no, we don't. you know? So that being said, we don't need to talk about it any further right now, but we can talk about it more as we go along. How do we make sure that these camps not only pass the optics test of people driving by, but pass the safety test for the people who have to live in them? So that's the bulk of my questions on that. We don't need to belabor that anymore at this point, but it's got to be an ongoing discussion. How do we keep people safe in the camps that we are allowing to remain in place at this point in time? And how do we improve the optics so that people who we need to support the work that we do aren't rebelling against the work that we do based upon what they see that they don't appreciate and don't understand? So I have a question for you also, Karen, regarding the flu shots, but I'll ask that separately and not at this time. Thank you.
And Chair, let me just say that Commissioner Farr, I'm not aware of those. So I certainly would, that's the first that I've heard about concerns in the unincorporated area. So the extent to which there are concerns there that the county needs to follow up on, please let me know and we will do that. I don't think anybody is suggesting passing the buck. What we're doing is trying to create clarity around what authorities are responsible for these various issues. And I think, as the board knows, this is extremely complex. And the county is not the entity that is responsible for absolutely everything in the area. We're required to partner with others. So we will absolutely own the things that are our responsibility. And please let me know about concerns in the unincorporated area that the county has some responsibility and authority to respond to. And we will absolutely, as we always do, follow up on that.
Well, based on the responses, I've clearly not made my questions clear enough. So I'll write the questions down, send them to you, and I'll send lots of photos of camps outside of city limits.
Well, thank you, Ms. Gaffney, for the update. You know, it's really it's really sometimes hard to wrap our heads around how big of an issue this pandemic really is, because we can only do so much inside of our own homes while we stay either isolated or limited from the rest of the public. But I was going to say, you know, we're knee deep in a pandemic, but we're really we're up to our shoulders in this stuff. And it's our job to help our community and neighbors and family and friends stay afloat during this time, when the nice thing is we know that there is a vaccine on the horizon, but it's just far enough that we still are treading water to get through this, and people are just trying to get through their daily lives and pay their bills and stay in their homes. And a lot of people aren't necessarily going to the doctor if they don't have to, or if they think it's not important enough. It's really a big role for us, I think, as commissioners, to share not only the importance of staying safe and physically distancing and washing hands and masking, but also to get out into our community and say, call up your friends and family and just see how they're doing, because self-care is a big, big deal right now. A lot of people are really, really suffering through this. And we have to do everything that we possibly can. I appreciate your time, and thank you for being flexible and doing this after our 10 o'clock time certain.
Thank you.
We will get through this, everybody. We will. All right, we're gonna move back to item 9B, a discussion on the Oregon State University Extension Service Tax Levy option and information. And with us, looks like we have Jillian Drews, Richard Riggs from the OSU Extension Service, and Judy Williams. Maybe you could start us with this particular item.
Absolutely. Good morning. Thank you. I will do that. And I think, Jillian, are you getting the presentation up, or do you want me to?
I'm going to work on it for just a moment.
Okay. If you can't, I will absolutely do that. So good morning, Chair Buck and commissioners. We have some guests here today. So Jillian Drews from the Oregon State University Extension Service, as well as Richard Riggs, the regional director. And as you know, just kind of as a reminder, we have an OSU Extension Service property tax levy currently that was approved in 2016 that is sunsetting in 2021. And as your role as the Board of County Commissioners, you have that authority to refer such a revenue question measure to the ballot. And so today OSU is giving you a proposal and a presentation to kind of walk through what they have in mind. We also have a series of meetings that are booked out on our calendar. We have that timeline information in your board packet as well, just to make sure that we can connect and meet all of the statutory requirements if we do choose to move forward with a ballot measure. My role is quickly just to be a liaison. So just trying to help OSU connect with our assessor, our clerk, county council, and help with board processes moving forward. So that is my role. And I will be here too if there's any further questions on the timeline as we get to it. So with that, I want to make sure there's enough time to have our guests do a presentation. We have roughly about a 15-minute presentation planned, and then some time for questions as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Jillian. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is it showing? Is there a presentation showing?
Yeah, looks great. Thank you.
Okay, I can't see it, which is a little unusual. Just a moment. Okay. Great. So good morning, commissioners. It's nice to see you again. Thank you for having us on the agenda today. As you know, the OSU Extension Service has a long history in Lane County, over 100 years of offering a great variety of educational services. And today we're going to give you an update on the things we're doing currently in light of the pandemic. And then we'll pick up where we left off last year with a discussion about renewing the local option tax levy that supports the Extension Service. So as a quick reminder, the Extension Service is the off-campus branch of OSU. We offer research-based education and information that's practical and community-oriented. And we are able to reach so many people in the county with a small staff because of our strong relationships, which span the public and the private sectors. These lists are not exhaustive, but rather just a good, healthy sampling of the businesses and agencies that we team up with. And of course, you can't really talk about Extension's work without mentioning the volunteers, who are the people who do a tremendous amount of that work. So we currently have over 400 volunteers helping in our mission to share educational programs in the broader community. We wanted to share some statistics to give you an idea of what we can accomplish in a normal year. So note this is data from 2019. Our 2020 data is still coming in. And as you can imagine, it will look very different because of how we've had to adapt our programs. But I do want to draw your attention to this 2019 number of over 39,000 volunteer hours, which is the equivalent of 19 full-time employees. So now you know the secret to our success. It's absolutely the volunteers. So in 2015, the board supported the Extension Service moving ahead with a tax levy for voters, which passed with 70% approval. And last year, I came before you in December and updated you on how that tax levy or tax revenue had helped us reestablish and grow all of our programs tremendously. So this is all information that you hopefully are pretty familiar with. And today I wanted to talk a little more about how our programs are rising to the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic and how we're continuing our mission to provide learning opportunities without the face-to-face contact that we're used to. So there was a massive surge in interest in home gardening. Fortunately, the Master Gardeners were able to pivot the plant clinic to being remote, and thank goodness, because there have been a lot of questions. Our faculty, our horticulture faculty, has seen a 56% increase in questions asked and answered. That's just in Lane County. And our horticulture staff really helped train our Master Gardener volunteers on how to sort of use all the technical equipment. And once they got that training underway, they've been able as a larger team to offer 43 workshops and webinars and quite a few educational videos for their YouTube. At the outset of the pandemic, there were new concerns about the safety of the food supply. Many people were trying to grow their own food and then grappling with what to do with all of the produce that they harvested. So we think these factors played a role in a tremendous increase in participation and interest in food preservation. So Lane County volunteers help operate the Preservation and Safety Hotline, and we're able to continue to do this remotely. They saw an 80% increase in calls to the Food Safety and Preservation Hotline just from last year. There was a 180% increase in questions asked to our campus experts, and then lots of new viewers and lots of page views to all of our resources that are online. Finally, Lane County faculty initiated what became a tri-state promotional campaign to bring extension resources to the point of sale in companies or stores that carry preservation supplies. These are shelf toppers that you can see on the right here in Walmart. So COVID-19 has presented many challenges for young people. 4-H participants were particularly upset that the Lane County Fair was canceled because they spend all year working up to that. But our 4-H staff jumped into action and created a virtual alternative online fair. So the 4-H kids could submit photos, videos of themselves, presenting the skills and sort of discussing what they had learned over the year. During the fires, the 4-H clubs, so volunteers, parents, youth, played a pretty big role in assisting the Lane County Animal Services team at the fairgrounds in helping with evacuated animals. And then our 4-H staff is just innovating, as the rest of us are, to try to find new remote programs. So Pick Up a Pen for a Pal is a statewide program, and then there's a new Outdoors Explorers Club. And we're really excited to announce that that our new 4-H faculty member, Dr. Melinda Garcia, started just yesterday. So we're really excited to have her expertise in our county. Our nutrition educators have had to pivot from working mostly in elementary schools to finding new ways to reach SNAP eligible audiences. So we've done that by working really closely with Food for Lane County to pilot remote cooking and nutrition sessions for adults, and that's been quite successful. And together with teachers at Calapooya High School in Bethel, we've created an asynchronous cooking program that teaches kids to cook at home actually for their families. That's going really well. They use produce from the Bethel farm, which is of course attached to their high school. This pizza, they made the crust from scratch and the sauce from scratch. So they're learning a lot. Our forestry agent is currently at home with a week-old baby, but before she went on leave, she was kept very busy meeting the needs of our local landowners and other forestry stakeholders. So she spent a considerable amount of time bringing their programs online, including tree school and intro to woodland management. And in the fall, she was able to work with some of the woodland owners who were affected by the Holiday Farm fire. The Extension Fire Specialist for the Willamette Valley and North Cascades is Amanda Rao. She started on October 5th and immediately began working to support Holiday Farm fire recovery efforts. So on her 4th day on the job, she gave a webinar educating landowners about post-fire hazard tree awareness. She's traveled to meet with landowners and provide perspective on wildfire mitigation for a podcast. She answers a lot of questions about what to do after the fire, and is currently engaged with helping the Howard Buford Recreation Area plan for fire management at Pisgah, as well as connecting Eugene residents with the Eugene Wildfire Preparedness Coalition. And with landowners spending more time on their properties than ever before, there's been a significant increase in requests for technical assistance for the Small Farms program. Their outreach channels have been leveraged to get out the essential and quickly evolving information that farmers need for their success during these really uncertain times. So Small Farms is providing virtual programs as well to stay relevant to farmers' changing needs. Some examples are developing a curriculum about on-farm direct marketing and agritourism methods, a virtual program that shares information about climatic adaptations in agriculture or dry farming, and working directly with livestock producers on analyzing their cost of production to improve farm viability. So that is the update on our current programming. I'm going to pass this presentation now over to our Regional Director, Rich Riggs, to discuss our proposal for a tax levy renewal. And Rich, you can just let me know when you'd like me to advance the slides.
Great, thanks, Jillian. And thanks, Chair Buck and Board. We appreciate your time this morning, allowing us to come before you and rediscuss this option. You'll find it to be very familiar if you remember last year's conversation. But I also want to start with saying thanks to Judy for her help with getting everything ready for today, and also Alex Kyler, who came and when we presented to our Friends of Extension, discussed this proposal, he came and discussed the levy process. He did that last year and he did it again this fall. And so we, I don't see him on the participants list, but I want to call him out because we do appreciate his help. So our funding in extension really comes from three major sources and a few smaller sources. And you can see our state funding, the legislature, the county tax levy monies. Most counties have 26 out of our 36 counties have actually tax service districts. And our long-term goal in 2026, if everything looks favorable at the time, is to actually ask for a formation of a county tax service district. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that is what we're thinking is long-term, five years down the road, to actually form a tax service district. But for the next 5 years, we're just going to ask to renew our levy. And we also have some federal funding. And so our federal funds and state funds will pay for some faculty members, and then county funds also pay for other faculty members. And the county funds typically pay for the support, like the education program assistants and the office staff positions. And the federal and the state funds pay for people like Jillian, or they pay for our new 4-H member who just started, and our fire resiliency person who also started in October. Jillian, if you could advance, please. Our current tax rate, as you know, is 1.5 cents on the thousand. So for a $300,000 home, they currently pay $4.50 per year, which is about one drink at Starbucks. Jillian, please advance. And when we compare to our neighboring counties, you can see that they're much higher. Benton County is 8 cents, Lynn, Douglas are 7 and 6.5 cents respectively. Polk County, 7.5 cents. Marion County, which is about the same size as far as population wise, pays 5 cents on the thousand. Jillian, please advance. And what we're asking is to go to 2.8 cents per thousand. And the numbers we received from the assessor, we believe this will bring in just over $1 million a year, which you can see doesn't quite double what we are currently collecting. Jillian, please advance. And again, why we're asking for this advance is because we have such a small staff right now, and we don't really serve some of those far-flung communities. I heard earlier in the conversation about how places like Oak Ridge and Florence are disconnected from the Eugene Springfield area, and that's very much true in the extension world as well. And we do provide some services, but what we would really like is to have an increase in our staffing so that we could actually embed extension people and actually have them live and serve in those communities and work there and be known, and really so that those people in those communities can rely on those people firsthand and know that there's an extension person there. We are expanding a little bit in Oak Ridge through the food pantry work, but there's so much more we could do, and that's where we want to continue. If we received a higher rate, we could serve the communities up the McKenzie River Valley, up to Oak Ridge, Westford, down to Dune City, Florence, Mapleton, in those areas. And then we could also expand our footprint within the Eugene Springfield area as well, because there's so much more work we could do. There's always more work we can do. Jillian, please advance. In 4-H, we would like to expand into the STEM program area, and I did talk about this last year as well. There's over 400 tech companies in Lane County employing over 4,400 people, and that's $329 million in wages. And those you can see below the job growth by 2024. Expected to grow almost 1,200 more new jobs. And, we want to be poised to help meet those needs, because if you recall back to Jillian's very first slide, we're about helping economies and people and providing research-based knowledge to do that. Jillian. As you know, Lane County is the 4th most populous county in Oregon. and has the third largest metropolitan area. And that we have a very hard time serving that population with the current 1.5 cents on the thousand. By increasing our funding, we can increase our footprint. Jillian. So the next steps, we'll be coming back next week for public comment to allow people to ask questions or comments on our proposal. I have been in contact with Commissioner-elect Trieger. I let her know that we were going to be here today and that we'd be doing public comment next week. Unfortunately, she said she's not available either day, but she did state very clearly that she is a past supporter of extension and really is looking forward to working with extension going forward. And then what we'll need eventually is an order to be sent to the clerk and a formation of an explanatory committee. Assuming you guys refer us to the ballot and approve us. I'm sorry to make that assumption because it is completely up to you, but we also stand ready to help in any way that we can. We made that very clear last year as we came before you for approval and recommendation to the ballot, and then we decided it would be in both of our group's best interest to withdraw that ballot and then come forward again in this fall for May 2021 ballot. So whatever we can do to help staff. We know your staff are busy and as everybody is in this time of COVID, but we remain ready to do what we can to help move this partnership forward. And that's it for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Farr.
But I'm in support of moving forward, and I'd like to point back in time and thank Commissioner Burney for getting us to this point right now, where we're going to be able to consider supporting the ask. And I just wanted to say this, Chair Buck, that I can vouch for Commissioner-elect Trieger's interest in extension, because during my years at Food Lane County, her desk was right beside mine, and we operated, of course. We use the Master Gardeners extensively at Food Lane County, as well as nutrition programs through Oregon Extension Service. So thanks for the work you do, and you can count on my support.
Commissioner Burney.
You can count on my support also. And my Master Gardener wife is most appreciative that her services were able to be used. Thank you.
Commissioner Brozovich.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Richard and Jillian and everyone at Extension for being team players and postponing their request to go on the ballot. They really did a great job of talking to other people about what's going on in the community, unlike the city of Eugene that just enacted a tax increase without talking to partners. At least you guys were talking to your partners, and we really appreciate that. And I'm going to be fully supporting this and actively asking people to vote yes.
Any other comments? Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I think it's a really wonderful program, and I'm glad you guys are keeping on with the next phase of it, and I'm really glad to hear of the interest in Commissioner-elect Trieger, and she certainly reflects the view of the vast majority of South Eugene residents that are very active and interested in the important work of OSU Extension. Thank you.
Commissioner Burney.
I want to thank you for allowing me to make one more comment, and I want to assure the chair I will not do something stupid like move a question before the chair can provide input. I want to reiterate Commissioner Bozovich's and Commissioner Farr's remarks. You have been such wonderful team players. You were willing to move and adjust based upon what pre-COVID plans of the county were as it related to other bond initiatives. And I can't underscore how accommodating and professional you have been through the process. And I, like I think other commissioners, will actively campaign for passage of this bond measure. And again, thank you, Chair.
Well, I think you'll probably see unanimous support from the board for you to move forward with this. We do sincerely appreciate the time delay that you allowed for the county, and I sincerely hope that the rest of the community will vote for this as well. I know in many of my rural areas, you're absolutely critical to them, and your service is so needed, especially as people are home more and cooking more for themselves. It's a big deal. So thank you again for your presentation, and we'll do this on our next meeting on the 15th for public comment. Very good. Well, we have about 10 minutes left in our agenda for today. I do have a noon meeting, a NACO Transportation Steering Committee meeting that I'll need to be on. So I'm going to go to the administrator for any final comments before we recess for the lunch hour.
Thank you, Chair. Austin Ramirez is with us. If you'd like a quick update on the business grant program, we can do that. I'm certainly available for questions about my previous update on Lane Event Center. We can take those later in this afternoon if you'd like. So if you're okay, do you mind taking a few minutes for Austin? Let me just say, Austin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Steve.
And so I'm sorry, I'm on a screen that only shows 6 videos, so you're probably on video. I just can't see you. I just want to say that Austin and the team have done a phenomenal job. We really appreciate that the state came through with some of the federal resources that we could distribute to our local businesses. We've been advocating 6 months ago for the state to do that. What was unfortunate is that we had such a short turnaround, and we were just notified about a week or 2 ago that we were going to receive these resources. So, Austin had to kick it into high gear and really work with our partners to get this program launched. And so impressed with the work that he and our partners have done in that front. So thank you, Austin, for that work. And I'll turn it over to you to provide an update.
Thanks, Steve. And hello again, Chair and Commissioners. Our allocation from the state ended up being $3.8 million after the state's formula that they used, which is a significant amount of money. It won't meet all of the demand. I think we know that, but it is much more money than we've received directly for this purpose than ever before, and wasn't a pass-through that went through multiple agencies. So we are grateful for it, as Steve mentioned. I would say, when we received the money, we saw that the deadline to get this money out was end of year, which for that amount of money and that number of transactions is an incredibly high lift. But we wanted to make sure we do our best to do a program that's equity focused and equity centered, and that would meet the needs of our businesses who have been the most impacted by COVID, which, as you know, is ongoing. And so we put together a 2-phase lottery system from our own experience and from looking at how other grant programs have been run since March. We realize that first come, first serve is a truly inequitable process for a lot of our communities, particularly those that are rural or communities of color, where it just takes longer for information to be shared or for information to reach businesses. So we wanted to make sure that it's a lottery system with 2 phases and that businesses have more than enough time to apply. So that program went live last Thursday evening. The website crashed as soon as it went live and was down for a couple hours, which is a good problem to have, I would say. It was up pretty quickly. It was up around 7 p.m. after it had initially crashed. To date, we've received 852 applications. We typically get a lot of applications that aren't eligible or are even from out of state or outside of our county. So we haven't had a chance to filter through all the applications to determine how many are truly eligible and will be put forward into those lotteries. And the application period closes on the 13th. So there's still some time. We're still spreading the word to make sure all of our communities and businesses are aware of the program and have time to submit an application. After the 13th, as I mentioned, there will be 2 lotteries. So the first lottery will be for 75% of the funding, and that is for priority eligible businesses. There are different categories to be a priority eligible business. The first is that you were in the tourism, hospitality, or event sectors, which includes restaurants, lodging, caterers, event rental companies, for example. Those that had to close due to either of the governor's freezes, businesses that identify as minority-owned, women-owned, service-disabled, or veteran-owned, and rural businesses. So if you meet any of those categories, you're entered into the first priority lottery, which is for 75% of the funding. If you don't meet any of those categories or you aren't awarded in that first round, you're then entered into a second lottery, which is for the remaining 25% of the funding. So you still have a chance of receiving funding. It's hard to say how many businesses will fund exactly if we just do some math based on our grant amounts and the average amount. So if you're a sole proprietor, you get $7,500. If you have between 1 and 5 employees, you get $15,000. 6 to 15 employees, you get $20,000. 16 to 25 employees, you get $25,000. We're likely going to award somewhere between 300 and 350 grants to businesses. So significant amount. Again, we'll likely be oversubscribed, so this won't help everyone, but we think it'll make a huge difference for a lot of businesses at a really critical time that are struggling with the winter and COVID numbers. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Austin? Right, I don't see any. That's a lot to get done before the end of the year. So we appreciate all your efforts and everybody who's helping out to get those business grants out. I know they desperately need them. So for that, I think that we will pause here and go to a recess for the lunch hour, and we'll see everybody back here at 1:30. Thank you.
But prior to adjournment, if I may, I will not be making a motion to reconsider during items today.
Okay, understood. Thank you for letting us know. And with that, we are in recess.